We have an interesting panel. We'll try to wake you up after lunch. And we'll start by introducing the panel members. And I won't do it myself. I will let them do it. And if you allow me, let's start with our guests first. So Brook, can you come over and introduce yourself? And if you can help us after your self-introduction, give us your perspective. Give us some insight, something that would surprise us.
Thank you, Zohar. Hi, I'm Brook Wessel with T-Venture. T-Venture is Deutsche Telekom's corporate venture capital group. We have 16 investors, 12 in Bonn and 4 in the U.S., 2 in Seattle, 2 in San Francisco. And T-Venture's been around for about 14 years as a part of Deutsche Telekom, one of its strategic business units. We are a 450 million euro evergreen fund with about 72, mark that 71 next week, we hope. Companies will have one to celebrate as an exit. We have funds that are oriented around the strategic business units in Deutsche Telekom. The mobile fund is what I invest from. In that fund, we have about 12 portfolio companies in North America and Europe, and then the remaining balance are in the online space and the communication space in particular throughout Europe. I've been with T-Venture for 2 years, and before that, I was with T-Mobile USA for 5 years in product strategy and finance, and about 15 more years before that with AT&T Wireless and other operators and management consulting. Started my career as an engineer. So I enjoy very much the VC space, even though I've only been there for a short time, and I'm glad to be back here meeting Zohar and the Landmark team at this event. So if I was going to try to surprise you with 1 or 2 things that I find as insightful, it may be old, but it's new to us because we haven't found the exact company to invest in, but we're very keenly looking at companies that enable network APIs to be opened up into the ecosystem so the app developers and other service providers and infrastructure partners can optimize their services on the back of our networks. And so I think that's one of the keys to the next wave of mobile computing, mobile internet services. And hopefully we can talk more about that after the other guys have introduced themselves. Thank you.
Okay. Jacob Mizrahi, it's your turn. He sounds like Israeli. His name sounds like, but don't speak too fast Hebrew with him. Okay? He's really an American, so go ahead.
Thank you, Zohar. I want to thank you for having us here on the panel. I'm with Verizon Wireless. We're in the market development group. We focus on creating new innovation for a very large company and essentially taking ideas and concepts from an initial stage all the way to going to market, and we'll build new opportunities for the company and get these new businesses on its feet. And once they're mature, we pass them over to our product management group. So essentially, we're focused on building new innovation as an entrepreneur versus an entrepreneur. But with my background, I've worked with different startups as an advisor. I've worked with different investors to analyze companies. I've also helped launch and run a business incubator where we looked at early stage companies that we brought in and took equity stakes in them and built a services business on how to build these startups. I also have been in mobile for quite some time, working for different carriers as a strategic consultant and also as a leader in a management capacity in one of the carriers in the U.S. And my background is a combination of engineering and marketing and finance. So I kind of look at things from a broad perspective, but always having that technology focus and understanding what is the technology. Is it commercial? Is it scalable? Really, what services can be built on top of that? And so a lot of what we look at today with startups have that dynamic and component. So it's a pretty interesting perspective to have, and I look forward to talking further in our discussions. I want to thank you.
Okay. Mody is the representative of the private VC here. The rest the other people come from big organizations. Some of them are VCs, but kind of from a big organization. So, Mody, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Rosen. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of Magma Venture Partners. We've been operating in Israel for the last 10 years, a little bit over 10 years, investing in ICT, information and communication technologies. We invest in primarily in 3 domains: in new media, in software as a service, and semiconductors.
What's your insight?
No one else shared his insight. So, we were asked to give one bold insight regarding the future. I'll give 2 insights actually, and they are going to be bold. One is related to the mobile space, where I think that the insights are 3-4 years away. So they're not for the next year, but not for 10 years, because for 10 years it's really easy to give an insight. For one year it's stupid. So I chose.
In 10 years, who will come back to you?
That's right. That's what I mean. So I think that basically one thing that will happen in the mobile space in the next 3-4 years is that the 2 intermediaries, the 2 prime intermediaries, which is Apple with the App Store and Google with the market, with the Android market, are going to be pretty much squeezed out of the market. So their position will be much smaller than it's today, meaning that their value in the value chain is going to decrease substantially, and that is going to be a very important development in the industry. So that's pretty bold, right? The second bold prediction I want to make, which is more related to the media than the mobile, but everything is really pretty much interrelated today, is that I think that in the next 3-4 years, we might see Facebook taking 30-40% of the search business. So this business that is now shared between Google and pretty much Google and Microsoft with Bing, we will see Facebook taking pretty substantial share of that business.
Well, thank you, Mody. Well, Facebook thinks that they are going to be the internet. There is not going to be any other internet.
So it's not that bold, you say?
Well, no, it's bold. It's bold. Okay, and we have Mony, the last one. You'll do it.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Hello, 1 second. My name is Mony, and I'm from Motorola Mobility Ventures. I'm responsible for investment in Israel and Europe. Generally speaking, Motorola Mobility Ventures is the investment arm of Motorola Mobility, looking for new ideas, disrupting and cutting-edge technologies, new business model, talents, etc. All that in order to build and develop a pool of growth options for our current businesses and fuel new services and markets, and also hedging our bets. Our strategy, in a nutshell, is a combination of strategic and financial gain, meaning we would like to see strategic fit and synergy between the startup we are investing in and our businesses. On the same time, we would like to see a decent return on investment. Portfolio, we have about 28 portfolio companies. This is after the separation from Motorola to 2 in the beginning of 2011. 1/3 in Israel, about 9, 1 or 2 in Europe, actually 2 in Europe, and the rest in Silicon Valley. I believe we have exciting portfolio, to name a few, Amobi, Broadlight, Onavo, together with Magma, and Catch Media and others. Regarding prediction, I don't know, it would be a bit broad, and you may say obvious, I don't know. But of course, we are all aware that mobile and internet is getting into every aspect in our lives. Now, considering that, and I would say the combination of broadband access, network neutrality, powerful CE devices, and cloud services, I believe the combination of all that, and it's happening as we speak, but it shall continue, is actually changing and disrupting, as we know, the business models and the way people consume media and communicate. And ultimately, it should change and impact all the players in the value chain, from the studios to the broadcasters, operators, etc. Now, again, you may say it's happening as we speak, but we still, most of us are watching linear TV or broadcast TV. Still, cable and mobile operators are very powerful firms. I believe that in the long term, we will see some of the internet giants, to name a few, like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and of course Apple, because among other things, they're also, you may say, an internet giant, and possibly newcomers, but they are going actually to control and take the lead position across all the board. I guess this is what would happen 5 years from now. Okay, thank you.
Mony, by the way, are you Motorola or Google?
Motorola Mobility, for you. Motorola Mobility for now.
Right now, Motorola?
Sorry?
Right now, you're Motorola?
Yeah.
Because I expected you to answer something about Facebook, etc. No, not yet.
Not say anything
okay.
about Google.
I was asked by the organizer to talk about several things, and I'll start with the data growth, as they said it. We have just a short introduction here. We all see the growth in data over the mobile phones. It's coming from the video, it's coming from browsing, it's coming from the emails we're using, it's coming from everywhere. The pattern is very clear. People argue whether it's 2 times every year or more than 2 times, more than 100% every year, but it looks like it's going to grow at that rate for many years to come. Now, when you talk with customers, they don't understand what's the problem. I mean, why should they be able to do on their mobile phone everything that they do on their computer or everything that they see on their television? And from their point of view, they're right. We, technologists, look at it and say, well, wait a minute, where is all that bandwidth going to come from? Because on cellular phones, on cellular networks, it's not that easy to increase the bandwidth. So my first question to the panel here is, where do you think it will come from? I mean, is it going to come from 4G? Is it going to come from Wi-Fi offload? Is it going to come from compression, from wherever, caching, throttling, tiering? People are trying many ways. Are all those ways going to be a solution for the problem? Or is this problem going to stay with us? And if it is going to stay with us, which is, by the way, my opinion, if you didn't guess that, but I'd love to hear yours, then the next question will be, is that a problem for the operators, or is it an opportunity? Again, in my opinion, it's an opportunity because I think that there's no bigger opportunities when you have an over-demand for your product. And in this case, the product, the bit per second that the operators are transferring seems to be under an over-demand. But then my next question, and I'm giving you all the questions so you can relate to it anywhere you want, is if that's an opportunity, you as operators or you as advisors to the operators, how would you deal with that opportunity? Do you see a way to optimize the network or to monetize the network better than what they are doing now? So the floor is yours, and who wants to read? I think we can do it.
Are these working? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, let's sit.
So I'm coming from the carrier perspective as Verizon Wireless, and we're the largest carrier in the U.S. We have something like 206 million subscribers. It's fairly large. It's a fairly large. I'm sorry, 106. Sorry. We only 300 million, so I'm jumping ahead. We're not that far yet, but we recently launched 4G over the last year. And I will say yes, in fact, that, I mean, in terms of data growth, it's going to come from everything you mentioned, Zohar, in terms of, it's going to come from 3G networks, 4G networks, Wi-Fi, and any other types of systems that will allow interconnectivity with that end consumer or business. And we start to see as a first leader in the space for broadband service, that as soon as we enable that service, that right away our systems can get overloaded fairly quickly. And so it's an opportunity and it's a challenge at the same time, because we also have to continually figure out how we monetize and be conscious of the investments that we put in, both from the infrastructure perspective and with the deals that we do with OEMs and all the other partners, that we in fact do generate a lot of value, but the challenges are also in terms of continually figuring out how to capture that value and monetize it, and continually to evolve our services so that they are fairly competitive and leading edge and innovative. And that's part of what we do within our group. We envision where new opportunities are, and we build new capabilities to fit those needs. But as soon as you talk about mobile, everything today is getting a hook into the mobile arena in terms of, if we're talking about specific verticals, enterprises needing to access information, email, content, databases. I mean, it's quite overwhelming. So the challenge is going to be, how do we continue to build a robust enough network to handle the capacity? And in some sense, we're limited with physical spectrum, limitation in terms of access technology. You mentioned compression. That's one area. Providing more efficiency for managing content and how it's distributed along what type of device as you need, and being conscious that the carriers initially had open-ended plans that were unlimited usages, and now they're cutting back and saying, well, that doesn't work. If you give it an unlimited plan, it's going to be used in an unlimited way, and there's no way that a network can sustain that type of usage. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's very exciting because it's a really good challenge to be faced upon.
AT&T network crashed once they introduced the iPhone.
Right.
You're saying your network will not crash? Verizon is better,
every carrier has their susceptibility points. Actually, I was an AT&T user, not working for Verizon at the time, and when that actually happened, I actually switched over because I had the reliability issue. I mean, I wasn't getting calls. Every network is going to have that to some degree, but we feel that we're in a better position based on the robust network architecture and the way we've approached devising our services, that we're in a better situation to capture more of the opportunity.
Let me ask Brook, because he comes from a carrier, or at least related to a carrier.
Sure. I agree that there's no silver bullet. And I think I could use an example of my sister has learned how, she's a journalist, lives in Frankfurt, use her tablet and her smartphone in hotspots. Now, it's not exactly what the operator had in mind, given all the 3G investment. But consumers, at the same time, demand a great experience, but don't have a threshold for paying for all that data. And so you see throttling, at least in the U.S. market for T-Mobile U.S., when you get to 5 gigabits, you get knocked back down to a lower 2.5G speed, things of that nature. And consumers respond to that by going to hotspots or using their home Wi-Fi or their office Wi-Fi to download content when they can get it for lowest cost per bit, things like that. So I think a combination of consumer education and the operator's use of compression and other technologies that you mentioned are going to be what solves some of the issues. But I think you also see some operators exploring the use of time shifting and other technologies to deliver content to devices on a network favorable basis. And the network knows where you are, and the network knows what kind of content you like, and your profile, if you will, can be predictive in a way that you get the median content you want when it's at the lowest cost per bit according to some rate plan that you subscribe to. I think that's one model that you'll see be experimented with. So I'll throw that into the mix with what Jacob had to offer and leave some time for
Mody, you wanted?
Well, I think that the problem is that operators, and actually all of us, were caught by surprise. We didn't plan or envision that kind of usage of data. And so, basically the networks of operators were not designed fundamentally to serve so much data. They were designed primarily for voice. So fundamentally, the network design and architecture has to change, and it will change. And the prime change will be around the architecture of the base station and the reuse, or the way the spectrum is going to be used. Operators need much more dense and much smaller base stations, so they can do a much better reuse of the spectrum. This is why Wi-Fi is much more efficient than 3G. And that's the prime driver for increasing capacity. And that will happen between now and in 2020. That will happen. So we'll see much smaller base stations, basically 4G base stations that will look like Wi-Fi hotspots. That is number one way to solve the problem. And that will happen because it must happen. The second thing that will happen, which will be a prime driver for the solution, is caching of content in the network. The way that the content is being served today doesn't make sense for this kind of high volume usage, because both of us go to the same content, and we go to the other side of the world to fetch the same content, but we can live next door. That doesn't make sense. It's inefficient. And what will happen is that caching technology is going to improve an order of magnitude, and a lot of the content will reside at the edge of the network and not at the core of the network. It's the other only way to solve the problem. So I think that we are suffering right now from the fact that we did not plan for this kind of demand of bandwidth and capacity, but solutions are in the making, and the problem will be solved. There will always be hunger for more capacity, but the prime problem will be solved in the next few years. As to the last questions, whether it's an opportunity or a threat to the operators, I think it's an opportunity to the good carriers, and it's a threat to the bad ones. So I think that those that will be smart and move fast will actually gain market share because they will serve their customer base better.
Okay, I would refer to the second part of your question because so many was referring to the first. But first, just to say regarding the capacity and throughput issues, I believe that, generally speaking, bit per second, per hertz, per feet square is always going to be a problem. As you said initially, it's not going to be solved. Even if they are going to bring more capacity, you'll find more application, more services that would consume, and more people are going to use that for more application we are not even imagining right now. So it always, spectrum is limited resources by default, and we always are going to encounter such problems. Back to your second part of the question about, so can they monetize that, or what services, or you have talked about over the top, what could they do with that? So generally speaking, I think that it's difficult, meaning if at all, to monetize the data growth, and to enjoy from that. Although there are some steps they could take, and we see some indication on that. So first you see, and I'm talking about the data packages and possibly some services around data. So around data packages, you see a trend to move from unlimited to tiered packages, which make all the sense of the world. It's visible, it's fair, it's transparent, and possibly it's going to cause to less data consumption by default. Or alternatively, people are going to pay more. So either you are going to relatively spend less money for having a performing system, or alternatively, your top line is going to, and profitability doesn't care if it's coming from the top or the operation expenses. So this is one. Second step, you see that already, actually I've seen something on Verizon talking about these turbo buttons, etc., trying to do some prioritization and creating, like, well, in a way, higher bit rates. So there are some thoughts about talking about bringing a premium service with higher bit data rates and best efforts. Possibly, this could also bring to get the top line higher than what we have today. The third one, and the extreme one, I think, and I don't think it will happen, is we know that wireless carriers are not limited to the network neutrality restrictions that the wireline carriers are. And in a way, they could actually do deep packet inspection and give service per type of the type of the package. So go to things like class of service, so video conversation or conference, or voice over IP, or professional gaming would be like class 1, and then interactivity class 2, and best effort class 3. I'm not sure it's legal. I'm not sure the user is going to appreciate that, but this is also an option to consider. Regarding services, they have to, and I think they are in the way. They must leverage the place they are in the infrastructure. All the data flow is go through them, and they could actually, again, try to bring services like parental control or any other sort of filters that would and offer such for enterprise security, etc. They could develop, maybe not by themselves, by third parties, but they could offer such services. Another thing that I thought is interesting, it's about your question about the over-the-top. What could they do with that? And I think there is an interesting thing that I haven't seen them doing that, but I think it's...
I didn't ask this question yet, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So,
I'll ask it later.
Okay, so I assumed, I predicted you're going to ask that.
You prepared yourself.
Yeah, so what I thought, I mean, look about, I'll give an example. Take an example, Spotify. In the US, they are charging $10 per month for a mobile user, and you get access to their, I don't know, 12 million songs or whatever, but the data is on your account. So even in their website, they are suggesting you to sync offline over Wi-Fi your playlist. So don't do that over the cellular. And I think it's not a great experience. Now, supposedly, operator could come to Spotify and suggest to give unlimited data for that service, and let's say instead of $10, pay $12 or whatever, and do some rev share, and actually change the experience. The same could be, and again, I don't know who's here listening to, I'm listening a lot to internet radio in the car. You can consume easily 1 gigabyte a month, easily. I mean, if you are playing 2 hours a day music. Let's say in an equivalent way, you could with Netflix. Or just today, I've seen that Samsung has a joint venture with Blockbuster. So you could do the same way with movies and suggest them to do unlimited data for this service. Or alternatively, suggest to prioritize and give better quality for YouTube or Samsung and Blockbuster. So I think they could actually cooperate and find some ways, interesting ways, to monetize, not the obvious one, not just to raise the how much you pay about the data, trying to be more, think outside of the box.
So you think over the top and carriers could cooperate and should cooperate?
Again, I'll tell you, one of the problems is with
Let me ask the question.
Okay.
He brought me to the next question, and maybe I'll go to that. And this relates to the over-the-top. Okay. When I studied in the university, I was told that as a company you have to make an investment, and then you have an asset, and then you start selling your asset, and you make sales and profits, etc. This is the old economy. In the new economy, it's similar but different. There are still companies who make investments and build assets, but then there are other companies who take the profits. And there is a split there, very interesting split. Carriers are making a big investment in their network, and then come Google and Apple and over-the-top and many other over-the-top, and use those networks very effectively and are very profitable because they don't have to make the investment. Not only that, they are normally pushing the carriers to invest more because their networks are not broad enough, and they don't have the bandwidth that they need to serve their customers. And that works very well. Now, the carriers, and since the panel is more on the carrier side, I'm asking the question from the carrier point of view. Are the carriers going to keep on investing while other people make the profit? Can they cooperate, like Mony said, with over-the-top? Seems like the over-the-top are not very interested to cooperate because the current situation is fine, is good cooperation for them. They don't need any other type of cooperation. Can the carriers kind of force them to cooperate in different areas?
So let me just complete my response on that. First, of course, there is a problem with over-the-top that are not monetizing their service, so you cannot do anything with them, right? I mean, Spotify is taking $10 per month, so you can think about rev share. Same will be with Netflix. But there are ones like YouTube, you cannot, they are doing some revenue with advertisement, but it's not that much. But back to your question, well, we know all this debate in the States, in the Congress with SOPA, the Stop on Online Piracy Act, and we know all the thing with network neutrality and the difference between wireline to wireless carriers. So, generally speaking, the wireless carriers could block some services, actually. It's allowed. Not allowed from the wireline in order to sustain the neutrality. They could do that. I cannot imagine that in today's environment they would do that. But again, they should think about collaboration and cooperation. And I think they could always, in a way, threat the other services to, downgrade the quality of etc. And maybe in the long term, after people, all the value chain players will understand each other where we're at, they would be able to cooperate. Because as you said, it's not a normal thing. You cannot forever that I'm investing and you are getting the money. It has to be, sometimes, it has to get equal.
It can work for a very long time, as far as I think.
I think
maybe you should talk about network neutrality.
Post-web and net neutrality and a lot of these things are trying to approach the bigger issue that data consumption is going to continue to grow, and how is it going to be managed and by who, and who's going to be able to monetize off of it, and where large investments are made, how could you make those investments profitable? And as services start to mature and business models get challenged, that's where companies like ourselves have to step up and say, we've invested a lot of money in these assets. Let's figure out how to monetize, but also create an ecosystem that we can share and create relationships with companies that can leverage our core network and assets, but also, like you mentioned, have a rev share. But I think we're constantly going to be challenged, and just not only us, but other carriers and other operators that have this capital-intensive investment. And then, as you mentioned, over-the-top providers coming in, like a YouTube or any other content platform system, and it's a challenge. It definitely is, but it's a good challenge to have. And in some sense, we need to collaborate with our counterparts in terms of other carriers to realize that if we don't, then other companies in the value chain will come in and try to do that, like you mentioned about Google or Apple or some other OEM. So we have to be conscious of that.
I'm challenging your perspective, Zohar. I think there is no problem. I think that the business of the operators and the business of the content providers are two different businesses. True, the operators are going to invest a lot of money, and they will keep investing because that's their business. And in many markets, they will make a lot of money, depending very much on how many competitors are out there. And there are a lot of models that show that as long as you have 3 operators in a market, they will make a hell of a lot of money. If a 4th one comes in, it pretty much kills most of the margin. And if there is a 5th one, then everyone is losing money. So it's very much dependent on the competitive dynamics.
So in Israel,
yes, in Israel we're very familiar with it now.
We go from 3 to 5.
So exactly, as to the over-the-top services, the content services, it seems like that they invest less, but that's very deceiving, because you see Google and Facebook and so on making a lot of money, but you forgot how much money was thrown at bad content investments before these leaders became leaders. Okay, so it's true that in content and over top the services you can make a lot of money, but it's a much riskier business model. Okay, so I think that both of these businesses will survive or co-survive, each one making money in different way.
Okay. Brook, you don't have, in Germany, is there net neutrality in Germany? Or
Network what?
Network neutrality. What they have in the state that the carrier is not allowed to give priority to certain applications, etc.?
I should know about the German market, but I don't. I know about the U.S. market. But I'll go back to agree with your comment on the shift in the architecture, just to take us back to where we started. We made an investment earlier this year in a company that enables that shift in architecture to the edge and dramatically expand the capacity. And by doing that, we can offer infrastructure as a service on the B2B side, as well as new monetization capacity for video services and other consumer businesses. So I can't answer your net neutrality question in Germany, though.
Okay. I think we are out of time. So if you would allow me, I would like just each one of you, you know, there are about 150 people in the audience, I guess, so there are about 300 entrepreneurs here, and tell them what is it that you're interested in or what is it that you like to invest in, and I can assure you that once you step off the podium, they will be running after you. So you have an opportunity. Okay.
We like to look
One
at
idea that you'd like to...
we like to look at things not from an application perspective, but from a platform and services perspective, something that enables things to be layered on top of it. So if you can think of some core type of infrastructure or data service that can be scalable, that you can build things on top of, I think that's what we tend to like to look at when we're looking at new opportunities versus applications.
Thank you. Mody.
We are looking for brilliant entrepreneurs with a lot of passion about what they do and with a great vision.
Okay. You're after the people, not the idea. Mony.
So on top of that, in addition to that, I think I'm trying to give like a formula, anything that is a mix of mobile, internet, social networking, location, and media, a mix of that could be of interest for us.
We're looking for infrastructure platforms that enable us to bypass the core infrastructure legacy systems that we have today so we can get to market faster.
Thank you very much, and thanks the audience.
Thank you. Terrific panel. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.